From Beijing is Victor Gao, current affairs commentator and Chinese international relations expert. So, Victor, I want to get your take on Vice President Pence's comments, the tone compared to last year's speech, and what do you make of the timing as these trade talks will continue by phone on Friday?
Thank you very much for having me. I think Vice President Mike Pence's speech last night was a very important speech compared with the speech last year. I think there were some improvements in the tones or pronouncements. However, overall, I think it was still a speech full of hostility against China. And generally speaking, I don't think it's very much constructive speech as far as promoting the normal and constructive relations between China and the United States is concerned. Now, when he was a little bit more positive than last year, for example, talking about the trade war between the two countries and the possibility of reaching an impartial or partial trade agreement, for example, this was positive, and I think it will be well taken here in China. But his posture of hostility against China and the way he described the China-U.S. relations, for example, are very unwelcome here. For example, when he said mutual respect, come on, the United States under President Donald Trump is not showing China enough respect. When he was talking about rules of law in launching the trade war against China, the United States was not following the rules of law, for example. And come on, when he talked about the great achievements in China, the Chinese people and the Chinese government made all these great achievements because they worked extra hard. It was not because China did things wrong, for example, especially to the detriment of the United States. The United States need to improve its working style, for example, and productivity and efficiency significantly, really, in order to keep its global leadership role. And China, fundamentally, is not a threat to the United States at all.
Victor, you know, Mike Pence also brought up Hong Kong and said that the United States can't make a trade deal with China if it resorts to violence against the protesters there in Hong Kong. Seeing as Presidents Xi and Trump could meet next month at APEC and sign this mini trade deal, does a comment like that put that process in jeopardy?
Well, the Hong Kong situation is obvious, and it's open for everyone in the world to see. I think Vice President Mike Pence would do him and the United States government and the people a big favor by acknowledging the main feature of the situation in Hong Kong, that is the violence in Hong Kong, that is the disruption of rule of law in Hong Kong, and there is a loss of law and order in Hong Kong. So Vice President Mike Pence should have pointed out the deterioration situation in violence and the need for people in Hong Kong and the government in Hong Kong to do whatever that is permitted by the law in Hong Kong to bring back law and order in Hong Kong. And on the contrary, I think Mike Pence was really very much seized upon the so-called pro-democracy nature, which was no longer relevant in the situation in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a democracy, and the Hong Kong law protects the people's rights to do demonstration and protests if they are lawful and legal. So I think the United States can be better served if, for example, it calls on for a stop to the violence in Hong Kong and restoration of rule of law and order. Otherwise, for example, as we can see in recent days and weeks, whatever that's happening in Hong Kong in the way that violence is committed, for example, has been spreading to several other cities in Europe, in Latin America, for example. So be aware, for example, otherwise such kind of violence may spread to cities in the United States. And don't wait until it happens. The governments anywhere and everywhere in the world cannot tolerate violence that we have seen happening in Hong Kong.
All right, Victor Gao in Beijing, always great to hear your take. Thank you so much for joining us.